Three questions will be to Ms. Fershot Roth. We've heard references to an IMF study that claims the fossil fuel industry receives $660 billion in annual subsidies from our country, our government. According to President Biden's own budget, repealing all specific oil and gas-related tax preferences would raise only $45 billion over 10 years, a far cry from the $660 billion. Would you please explain how the IMF arrives at a ridiculous inflated figure?
Sure, yes, thank you for the question. Well, this is a working paper that does not represent the view of the IMF, as its authors say at the beginning, and it has not been peer-reviewed or published in a peer-reviewed journal, the way that Dr. Diesel's articles have been. Several features of the working paper are worth noting. China has $2.2 trillion in subsidies, the United States supposedly $660 billion in subsidies. The IMF uses the word subsidies to include not just direct taxpayer support for fuel use, but an estimate of environmental costs for the combustion of the fuel. Nearly half of the subsidy calculations are related to coal use. In fact, to the extent that onshore and offshore oil and natural gas development provides additional volumes of natural gas that can substitute for coal combustion, it would substantially lower the IMF estimates of the effective subsidy. In addition, the report makes no adjustment for revenues collected by federal, state, and local jurisdictions for oil and gas development of public and private lands. And according to the Department of Interior, the federal government alone collected over $100 billion in oil and gas revenues between 2005 and 2015. A further limitation of the paper is it doesn't effectively address uncertainty in calculations from the environmental costs of oil and gas use, especially given advances in control technologies. The paper has no estimate of environmental costs from wind or solar or hydropower. It discusses benefits of making fuel more expensive, but not benefits of making it less expensive. No estimate of benefits from fossil fuels, such as availability of electricity, drinking water and sewage systems, cooking systems rather than wood or dung, health benefits, or benefits from the idea of manufacturing jobs are given by the IMF paper, and there are many benefits from fossil fuels.
Agriculture is very important to Iowa's economy. Over the course of these climate change hearings, we've heard from Democrat witnesses who support market-altering and consumer policies to limit fossil fuel consumption and drive down emissions. Conveniently, they ignore the devastating impact that their policies would have on working-class Americans and small businesses, including family farmers. What role do fossil fuels play in maintaining food security domestically and abroad? And I know you touched on this a little bit in your opening statement.
Yeah, not only our energy security, but our agricultural production and food security depend on fossil fuels. Raising the price of fossil fuels raises the cost of food, and poor and middle-class people pay the price. Fossil fuels are essential for food production because of nitrogen used in fertilizers. In 2021, Sri Lankan President Rajapaksa banned synthetic fertilizer and pesticide imports. Prices rose in Sri Lanka and there were riots. Protests are also occurring in the Netherlands and in Belgium as policymakers attempt to curtail fossil fuels in agriculture. Farmers are rioting because they're losing their livelihoods in the name of fighting climate change, as European governments seek to reduce emissions of nitrogen oxide and ammonia, which are vital inputs to modern agriculture. European farmers are being told that because of the aim for net zero emissions, their industry is being phased out, and this disproportionately hurts poor people who have to pay more for food and who cannot afford to do so.
The Biden EPA recently proposed a new emission standard for light and medium-duty vehicles. This rule would require 2/3 of the new cars to be electric by 2032. Given your background as an economist, can you speak to this rule's feasibility and the cost it would impose on our economy and the consumer?
Well, it would impose massive costs on the economy. It would require 60% of new vehicles sold to be battery-powered electric in just 7 years, and right now 6% of vehicles sold are battery-powered electric. These new electric vehicles cost more. Charging also costs more. Used electric vehicles will be hard to find, and most Americans buy used vehicles because you don't know how long the battery is going to last. And electric vehicles take longer to recharge. They don't go well in cold climates. That's why there are only 510 of them in Wyoming and fewer in North Dakota and South Dakota, because the range is very limited. They harm the environment through mining for minerals. And many of these minerals are mined with child labor or slave labor. Electric vehicles will make America weaker and China stronger because the electric batteries and components are made in China, as opposed to oil and natural gas, which is produced by Americans with well-paying jobs here in the United States.
Thank you.
Senator Kaine, then Senator Johnson.
I want to thank the chair for calling this important hearing. When we talk about things